Hi there, Danny here from the Community Broadcasting Association of Australia, welcoming you to today's webinar, Promoting Online Safety for Young People. Community broadcasters have a unique and trusted relationship with their audiences, including young people in diverse communities around Australia. We can all play a positive role in promoting the important issue of online safety. And it is important because recent research has found that almost half of teens had a negative online experience in the past 3 months being researched, and about 3/4 of teens wanted more online safety information delivered through trusted channels. And with this webinar, we're hoping to better manage that. Joining us today, we're going to have Ian Watson, who many of you will know. He's the project manager for the CBAA Online Safety Project. You will have undoubtedly corresponded with Ian over the years, all the wonderful community projects that he provides to our sector. Kelly Britnell from the E-Safety Commissioner, who's an Education and Training Manager, will be joining us. Although they are on the slide at the moment, unfortunately, Alafaina Mamia, who is from 4EB in Brisbane, won't be able to join us today. But of course, Alafaina will be heavily involved with the project as they are the podcast host and producer. Today's webinar aims to provide broadcasters with a better understanding of some of the key online safety issues impacting on young people around Australia, what you can do to encourage young people to take action if they're experiencing issues with online safety, and the suite of new online safety resources that have been developed by the CBAA, which you can use to promote a safer online experience for young people. I will give the floor to both Ian and Kelly in just a second, but I do need to, should have said this much earlier, and apologies for not doing so, I do need to make mention that today's webinar is being broadcast on Gadigal land, and as such we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet, and that of the Gadigal people. We pay respects to elders past and present. Okay, without further ado, Ian, if you're ready and you can hear me, the floor is yours. I will stop sharing and give the screen to you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Danny, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for giving up your time to be part of today's webinar, which, as Danny said, is focusing on a really important issue, online safety for young people in our communities. As Danny said, my name's Ian Watson. Some of you would know me as a member of the CBAA team, and my work very specifically over the years has been on developing and delivering community education projects. I'd also like to start today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we're all meeting today. For myself, that's the Turrbal and Yagara people, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So why are we, as people whose main focus is radio broadcasting, coming together to talk about online safety today? I guess the short answer to that is that this is a critical issue and one of growing importance for all of the young people who are part of our families and our communities, and all of our stations and our audiences. And later in the webinar, we'll be joined by a member of the E-Safety Commissioner team, Kelly Britnell, who will talk us through in more detail what the key issues are for our young people in terms of online safety around Australia. Importantly, the issues that young people face in terms of staying safe online are really complex, and they're changing all the time. So this includes online bullying, sharing of images, sexting and sharing of sexual content, online fighting and drama, stalking and privacy issues. The list goes on. And when we talk about delivering information about an issue like this to young people and from young people, from trusted sources, this is where we all come in. Because, as you are highly aware, community broadcasters have that really unique and trusted relationship with their audiences, including young people in diverse communities around Australia. So in other words, we can all play a positive role on air and in our communities in addressing this important issue of online safety for young people. I'd like to start today by giving you a bit of an overview of some of the resources that the CBAA has been working on which we really hope that you will use in the coming weeks and months to promote online safety for our young people. So last year, the CBAA was very fortunate to be successful in our application for funding for an online safety project, with funding provided through the eSafety Online Grants Safety Program, an Australian government initiative. Over the past year, we've been working with the eSafety Commissioner and with some of our youth-focused stations and young broadcasters and a diverse group of young people around Australia to develop a range of resources for CBAA members to use to promote online safety for young people. I'll be talking through the resources we've developed in detail a little bit later in the webinar, and also talking about how you might like to use them at your station to promote online safety. But firstly, I'll provide a brief overview of what we've developed and the process we used to develop these resources. So the content that we've developed with young people, which I'll provide a little bit more detail about later in the webinar, includes a series of 12 community service announcements, which use the diverse voices of young people themselves, discussing a range of key online safety issues and providing some realistic and authentic advice on what other young people can do if they're experiencing similar issues online. We also produced a set of 6 social media tiles that you can use on your social media channels, and a fantastic podcast series, which features young people talking about online safety and discussing the issues which affect them. And this series was hosted by Alafina Mamea from Radio 4EB. What's been really important and exciting about this project is that we didn't just decide what we wanted this content to be, the issues that we thought it should focus on, and the advice that we thought young people needed to hear. To make sure that this content is relevant to and engaging for diverse audiences of young people around Australia, we handed the reins over to young people themselves to come up with project and content ideas through a 3-stage co-design process. So this co-design process included 4 planning workshops where we got together with groups of young people aged 12 to 18 in a variety of locations across Australia. So we had a group in far north Queensland, including a large number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, a group in Central Australia, again, with high representation of First Nations young people, and a group in Melbourne and one in Brisbane. These young people used these initial planning workshops to discuss the online safety issues that were most important to them and their peers, and to come up with some plans for processes which they could use to develop some content for the project. They also began discussing the core messaging that they thought could be included in this content. We then facilitated and supported 4 local co-design workshops where a total of 23 young people worked together with local youth facilitators, local youth broadcasters in 4 locations. And they used creative methods such as role plays, group discussion, drawing and script writing exercise to develop some ideas for the project content. So this included some ideas for the content, core messaging, and calls to action of the radio scripts, as well as ideas for social media content and podcast content. Then finally, we collated all of those ideas that young people had come up with, that they'd drawn, that they'd sketched, that they'd acted out, that they'd written about, and we developed them into some draft scripts, podcast content ideas, and social media content ideas. We then user tested these with young people, again in 4 locations, to really ensure that the language, content, and the advice in each resource is authentic and appropriate for young audiences. So young people were then involved in all aspects of the production of the final resources, from voicing the CSAs themselves to designing the social media tiles and being part of the development and production of the podcasts. So before I provide some more details on these resources and some ways that we think that you might like to use these resources at your station, I now want to invite Kelly Britnell, the Education and Training Manager at the eSafety Commissioner, to share with us all some of the key online safety issues that are important and emerging for young people around Australia. Kelly is an online safety expert with more than 15 years of experience in delivering high-energy presentations, and she leads a talented team of 10 people supporting eSafety's education and training initiatives. Kelly, thank you all for giving up some time today to share your vast expertise with us all.
Thank you, Ian. And I'm very excited to hear the details of your project. And I think one of the things that's so fantastic about this project is, eSafety Commissioner and the people that work there, we have very small teams, and so we can't get out to the masses, and we rely on organisations like yours who have great influence, and particularly for young people. And I think it's important for them to know what we do, so that you can pass that on, so that if people are impacted by harms online, that there is a place for them to go, and hopefully we can help with that. So today I'm going to give you a kind of high-level overview of eSafety, but I've also included some information and some research that we've found in terms of online safety messaging for young people. I'd also like to acknowledge the land in which I'm meeting you today, and I'm actually on Wongal land, which is just west of Gadigal land. So I'm out near Sydney Olympic Park today, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which I'm working from today, and to acknowledge those people that might be on the line, those that are past, those that are present, and those that are emerging. So let's get into the presentation. And some of this information you may know already as being part of this project, but the eSafety Commissioner came into being in about 2015, and we started off our life as a Children's eSafety Commissioner. And so the work that we did in the first 18 months was all focused on young people under the age of 18. And the reason for that is it was identified that children and teens are the most vulnerable groups online. But it didn't take very long before we started getting some other responsibilities. And so we got some funding to try and help seniors who, again, we know that when older people hit around 67, their digital literacy skills tend to plummet. And that's mostly because, maybe they didn't need the technology or use the technology in their working lives. And as we know, with the scams and that continue to evolve, this is a group we also need to provide some education for. So in 2015, it was decided that we would drop the children's out of our name, just because we had a broader remit of protecting all Australians from serious online harms. Now, the other date you can see on the screen is 2022. And the reason why we've added this there is because in January, we got some new powers. And so it really expanded our organisation. And when we started in 2015, we had 33 people working there. And today, and particularly in the last 12 months, we've had huge growth, and we've got about 210 people that now work at eSafety. The work that I do, and I'm in the education and prevention area, is one where I suppose our lofty aim is to prevent the harms from happening in the first place. And there's still lots more work to be done. And I think an awareness of who we are and what we do, and through the help of you and your influence, I think we can further get the message out. So we develop material right from the early years, right through to the seniors. And, we know from, even kids under the age of 5, about 94% of them, by the time they reach 4, are engaging in, with their parents, mostly their iPad, their phone, etc. And so some of our messaging is very, simple about being kind. And then it develops as you go through the kids and teens years. So there's a different focus on the sorts of messaging. But everything we do and everything you see on the website, we've got a growing research team. And so we base it on research that these safety commissions, but also there's other research that's coming from other, Australian sources and also globally. We've got resources. A lot of those are used in schools, and we've got training programs for different members of the community that influence other people. And I think that's the key for the work that you do. Now, we've got these regulatory systems, and to me, that's very, kind of government language, but really what it is we've got some laws that help us do something about the following things. And the do something is mostly about being able to remove content that is seriously harmful. And so we've got 4 investigation teams. The original team was a team that took complaints from children, from their parents, or an adult a child has authorised to report on their behalf. So if there's serious harms like cyberbullying, you can make a report to us, and you make a report after you've first reported to the social media site or the gaming site or wherever it's happened. And if they don't act within 48 hours, we come in as a safety net. And so if we, sometimes we have to go back and forth with a person who reports, and we'd rather not do that because that delays the time. But if we haven't got enough information, we try and get that from the complainant. And then if we think, yes, this does reach, the threshold of what serious cyberbullying is, we will act on that person's behalf and go to the social media company to say, this content needs to be removed. So in a similar way, image-based abuse team, I suppose when you report image-based abuse, which is the non-consensual sharing of private images, that the difference between the cyberbullying of children and the image-based abuse is that you don't have to wait 48 hours. So if someone has taken an image of you and that it would constitute image-based abuse, that's non-consensual, you haven't said yes to it, and it ends up online and it's a private image, then you can report straight away. And, our investigators sometimes will pick up the phone and have a discussion if they need more information. Now, the third and fourth investigation teams that we have is the illegal and restricted content team. And this team mostly takes reports around child sexual exploitation material, but they also have some powers with pro-terrorist content or really violent material. So that team there is very busy. Probably about 90% of their reports are child exploitation material. Now, the newest team is the adult cyber abuse team. And so this only came into being in January 2022. And so now we can take reports and hopefully remove content if it reaches the threshold for people over the age of 18. Now, I'll talk a little bit about each of the 3 main ones that, might impact and help with your messaging when you speak to young people. But before we do, I think, the nature of our work is often, I suppose, in the negative. But from our research, we know that young people and teens in particular, 9 out of 10 are actually using the internet for positive things. And whether it's, catching up and supporting friends and the like, I think it's important to highlight that most young people are doing the right thing online. So having that in mind, I now will talk about, some of the things we are seeing through our reports. And our investigators are saying the reports they get are becoming more complex and challenging, that if there's online abuse happening, that it's going on multi-platforms. And so that makes it very hard to collect the evidence. And it's really important that you give us the context of what's happening. So the more information you can give us, if you can give us URL addresses, that helps the investigators, you know, find the material in order to say to the social networking site, this content needs to be taken down. Now, some of the behaviours that the investigators say that they're seeing, that, you know, sometimes with the language, it's subtle and there's sly insinuations. And sometimes if an adult was to see it, they really wouldn't get the I suppose, harm that's being done, particularly around groups. It might be on Snap, but the cold exclusion of a person from that group, and that's done in many and varied ways. And some of the material that we're seeing is really brutal, and I would consider it to be hateful abuse. And we know, you know, some of you may have been targets of this sort of stuff online, and the impact is, you know, definitely on the individual, but also the wider, the family, the school, and the entire community, depending on what's actually happening. Now, we see our position as both educative and remedial. So we're not the police, and so we don't go after perpetrators. So that's not our job, but we do sometimes work very closely with law enforcement if, you know, a crime has taken place. And so what we want to do is, you know, educate people, both those who are targeted and also those that are doing the abuse, because what you want is to people to learn and to know the impact. And sometimes, you know, unless someone points out, you know, the harm that is being impacted, particularly in the online space where you don't see any of the sorts of reaction that your words might provide, I think sometimes, you know, there is real education around that. Now, the second area I wanted to speak about was image-based abuse. And so it gives you a bit of an idea of, you know, kind of age demographics. Of all the reports we get, a quarter of them are from under 18-year-olds. And then you might look at the next stat I've got on the screen, and it says approximately a third of the under 18 IBA, which is image-based abuse reports, involve intimate images being coerced from minors. And so this is where a young person gets into a conversation, often with someone they don't know, and that they often are lured to another social networking site. And we know Skype is often used. So you might meet someone, it's on Snapchat, it might be TikTok, get into a bit of an exchange, and then they suggest that let's go to Skype. And the reason why that they pick another platform is because there might be less security or less people actually watching, particularly if it's then a one-on-one sort of chat. And so often a request for an intimate image might be shared, and after a period of time, there might be some trust built up. But once someone sends it, we know what happens, you know, particularly when there's organised crime involved in this sort of behaviour. Then the tone changes and the request for money. And there's I suppose, a behaviour called sexual extortion, which in 2022 has really increased, whereby, you know, the police tell us criminal gangs are involved in this sort of thing. So sometimes it's peer-to-peer, and if it's peer-to-peer, e-safety can help. But if it's actually a stranger, and often they're internationals that are targeting Australians, and they're requesting for money or they're requesting more intimate images, there's another organisation called the ACE, and I hope I get this right. It's Australian Centre for Countering Child Exploitation. And so if you're under 18 and you are a victim of this, you need to be reporting into the ACE. Now, if by chance you report to eSafety, that's okay, because our investigators will see the nature of your complaint and will take that to the ACE to look into it further, because they are law enforcement. Now, the other thing I've got on the slide there, I'm being pressured to send nudes. I purposely put this one on because every week we have meetings, and the digital team, so they look after the website, they tell us where we're getting most of the hits on our website. And I think for the whole of 2022, every single week, the number one part of the website that's being accessed is I'm being pressured to send nudes. And so obviously it is a hot topic at the moment. So the last part I wanted to just give you a little bit of detail was the was around the types of intimate images, because I think this is quite unique with our scheme. So, you know, what sort of things can you report? The first is if there's an image showing a person's intimate parts or, you know, or private areas. The second is if it's showing a person's private activity. So, you know, a place where normally photos aren't taken, if a person's, you know, having a shower, going to the toilet, etc. And the third one is if there's an image showing a person without their religious cultural attire. And that doesn't mean it has to be a naked image, but we do know that in some cultures, to have an image taken, you know, without, you know, certain clothing would not be looked kindly on in terms of the rest of the community. And so I think that's a really key part for people to know. So finally, the adult cyber abuse scheme. Now, this has a much higher bar to reach the serious threshold than children. And that's because there's an expectation that adults have a few more skills, maybe a bit more resilient than children. And cyber abuse in the context of what we do must target an individual Australian adult, not a whole group of people. And so we've had a lot of complaints this year. You can see we've had 12,000 plus complaints. And probably the most serious ones that we get are doxing. And so doxing is when someone posts maybe your phone number or where you live, and then often they kind of crowdsource abuse from others. And so you might find that you are inundated with text messages and calls because someone's put your phone number up online. The other thing is posting threatening, you know, kind of death threats or encouraging self-harm. So there's some of the things that are reaching the threshold with this particular scheme. So I mentioned we're a safety net, and it's a good way of considering what we do. And so our real purpose is, or goal, primary goal, is to rapidly remove and alleviate harms. So it's important to know we don't have people trolling the internet looking for harmful things. We're a complaint-based scheme. So you've got to make a complaint before we investigate. You know, the great thing is that 80% plus, and depending on what scheme, they have different percentages, but overall, 80% of our removal requests succeed informally. And by informally is that when we ask a social media site to remove content, they do it. Because as a government regulator, we also get a big stick. And so if they don't do what we ask, we can actually fine them. And we haven't had to really resort to that in the 7.5 years we've been in existence. So that's a good thing. Now, I thought, because you are speaking to young people, I might just highlight some of the work that we are doing. And I think it was about 2 years ago now, we commissioned some research through the University of Western Sydney. And what we asked them to do was to engage a whole bunch of young people and tell us how teens in particular want us to message to them. And so we've got on our website, we've actually got the paper in it, and it's quite reader friendly. But I just picked out a couple of things, and they're really simple things that the young people suggested to us. And they said, use clear, concise language that is easy to read and understand, and in your case is easy to listen to. They said, make sure you send a positive and supportive message rather than a prohibitive one. We know that scare tactics don't work. You can scare a person for, a couple of hours, maybe a couple of days, but in the long run, putting the fear into someone is not a good way to message. They also told us to use humor where appropriate to bring a lighthearted tone to confronting messages. And sometimes it's hard to get that exactly right, but there's a whole lot of things they've told us. So make sure if this interests you, you have a look on our website. Now, once we did that research, we decided to take it and kind of use it. And so one of the other education teams actually worked with a whole bunch of young people to create a new channel on Instagram. And I think it's called Scroll at eSafety. And I've got a couple of images there. And, you might want to follow that because there's some excellent messaging, again, all youth-led, and, quite a diverse range of young people we use for this. and drew on the research that we got from the University of Western Sydney. So that's just one of the things we've done this year. The other thing we started in April this year was the Youth Advisory Council. And so a lot of government agencies are having a similar sort of thing, and it's to ensure that youth voice is being heard in these places that there's things going on that impact them. And so definitely we need to know, what people want. And in this Youth Advisory Council, there's about 25 young people aged 13 to 24. And so they join together. At the moment, it's virtually, and we're trying to organise one face-to-face, but they discuss potential solutions and supports. They sometimes will have some resources, and we put it by them to say, is this in the right voice? What do we need to change? Is this really happening? And I think, providing that voice to government on issues affecting young people is absolutely vital. And so, it helps us to make sure, our target audience is always in mind in anything that we do. I thought I'd share you this, and there's a lot of writing on the screen for this one, and I really hate that on a PowerPoint slide, but there was no way I could do it in a way that was any simpler. And one of the first meetings we had with this group of young people was, tell us some of the online safety themes that impact you, and you think that we should be doing more of. And so you can have a read of this yourself, but I'll just pick out a couple. And in that first column, negative body image and girls comparing themselves to an ideal on social media. And I think the bottom one in that first column is also a really good one to remember. It says comprehending online scams and identity theft, especially for people with English as a second language. And this would apply to teens, but often teens are giving advice to the adults in their household or in their larger community groups, because they're seen as being more knowledgeable about what's happening online. Another one from the middle section, if something distressing happens, feeling ashamed to seek help. And help seeking, we know, can be problematic for those in their teens, because often they won't seek help or they won't report because either they think nothing will happen or people won't understand. And I think to make sure that we're always promoting things like Kids Helpline, who take calls 24/7 on the phone, but also what's really popular is their web chat. Web chat, I think, only goes to 10 o'clock at night. That could have changed, but last year it was up to 10 o'clock. And they take calls from 5-year-olds right up to 24-year-olds. And with Headspace, and they have eHeadspace, again, they take, calls and messages back and forth from 12-year-olds up to 24 as well. So always making sure that we give referral pathways is important. If you're going to talk about distressing things, and sometimes you might bring up something that might be current, it might be in the newspaper, also having those warnings for people, because sometimes you don't know what your listeners have experienced themselves, and it could be particularly distressing to have those topics brought up again. Also, algorithm bias they brought up, and eSafety this week, we just put out a position paper on recommender algorithms, and why is it that we are fed more information that really is teen specific? If you're a teen, I'm obviously not a teen, and I see things and I think, they've figured out how old I am, and maybe they know people my age maybe have, a waistline that's larger than when they were a teenager, and you're getting all this weight loss sort of ads being targeted at you. I'm getting to an age where now I'm getting superannuation ads, and that's obviously coming from, maybe what I'm looking at, but also they're putting demographics together with what they know people are searching for. The young people also brought up doxing, which I mentioned before. And again, interestingly, the last one about culturally and linguistically diverse populations can be excluded from discussions about being online, and it's because you might have a profile picture in religious wear, and people make some assumptions or decide they don't want to communicate. So really varied themes that I think might be good, starting points for conversations. The other thing that I would just highlight is the section on our website for young people. And again, we're currently in the process of, when we engage young people through Scroll, we also had another group of young people who we got to rewrite our content that was targeted at young people. And so that just shows you a few of the things and topics that we have on that particular page, and it has its own tab up the top called Young People. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an overview of what we do at eSafety. Maybe some information that you can take away, or that might be something that piqued your interest and you think, yeah, that's something I'd really like to talk about. Next year, 2023, on the 7th of February is Safer Internet Day. It's like one of the many days that we have for a whole assortment of things, but it's a day that the eSafety Commissioner is responsible for in Australia. And we love it as a day. It's our busiest day of the year. We get most of the hits and most of the people coming to our website. It's just a great day to hang messages on. And we sometimes find, one day is not enough, and we often spread it over a couple of weeks. And so if you happen to have an audience during that time, it would be fantastic if you could use some of our resources. We have some stakeholder kits that you can use with some information that you could also share. So at that point, I might hand it back to Ian. And if you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them.
That's fantastic, Kelly. Thank you very much for that. We will link to those resources that you refer to as part of the follow-up materials for this webinar, and direct people to them. They'll be accessible from your website, I'm assuming?
Well, everything's accessible from the website.
Excellent. We shall link to those. Ian, I will let you have your voice and screen.
Thank you so much, Danny. And thank you so much for that, Kelly. If anyone who's online live with us does have any questions for Kelly, pop them into chat. And at the end of this final little 10-minute segment that I'm going to deliver now, Kelly might be able to come back and answer some of those questions. I just also wanted to note that we will be doing some specific promotions for Safer Internet Day for next year. And we will have some grabs and some ideas for you for how you can promote Safer Internet Day on your station available. So we'll do some promotion of that closer to the time. For this next very short and final session of the webinar, I'm going to provide a little bit more detail about the resources that we've produced with the support of Kelly's team at the eSafety Commissioner. So, as I mentioned earlier, the key resource that's been developed by young people as part of this project is a series of 12 community service announcements. Each of these focuses on a specific issue relating to online safety, which young people themselves told us was important to them. And you'll note that many of these do align with those key issues that Kelly shared with us, that the Youth Advisory Committee had said were important to them and to other young people. Each community service announcement features a young person highlighting, sometimes using a bit of humor, which again, Kelly told us was really important, and young people certainly told us that they wanted to approach these issues from a positive stance and to use humor where possible, not from a deficit sort of stance. And each issue is tackled in a separate community service announcement. From there, the voices of other young people are used to remind the audience that what happens online can be as scary, hurtful, or dangerous as when similar things happen in the real world. And I guess coming back to that point that Kelly also made, that for a lot of young people, this is their real world. And we really need to be aware that when things do hurt people online, they're hurting them in the same way that they would if those same things happen in real life. So that's a real theme that flows through all of the scripts and all of the community service announcements. Each segment also includes some ideas for where young people can get support if these issues are impacting on them. And again, we had a lot of conversations with young people about the kind of support that they would feel most comfortable accessing. So we didn't want to just send people off with the idea of talking to a trusted adult if that's something that they mightn't be comfortable or prepared to do, or if, as Kelly said, they might feel hesitant or ashamed about what's happening to them and not prepared to seek help in that way. So these are the 12 issues that young people came up with that are covered in the CSAs. I won't talk through those all in detail because you can see them all on the screen. Similar issues were developed for a series of social media tiles that can be used to help promote the project and also to provide young people with some reminders that what they do online can have serious impacts in real life. Again, each of these was developed using a similar theme to the CSAs, focusing on reminding young people that the actions that they take online, whether that's part of being part of bullying or sharing information or images with strangers, can have the same consequences as doing similar things in real life. So the 6 issues that these social media tiles cover are what to do if cyberbullying is happening to you, what to do if online hate is something that's part of your online world, what to do around that issue of social media pressures and unrealistic standards online, which so many young people told us is a real issue for them today. Identity theft and not sharing your identity, and I suppose those key issues around privacy and what information it is okay to share online, what to do around sharing inappropriate or risky content, and also importantly, how to support others if you see cyberbullying happening. And then we also have this wonderful series of 6 podcasts, which I'd really encourage you to check out, hosted by Ella Faina, with a wonderful group of young people talking really authentically about their experiences online, some of the issues that are important to them and their peers, and what they felt comfortable doing in situations where they felt unsafe or hurt or pressured in an online context. So again, those 6 issues that are covered in the podcast are there for you on the screen. Sharing or receiving nudes or sexual content, which again was such an important issue for young people who are part of the podcast. What to do if you're in a space where unhealthy views, racist views, or views about gender are being shared online. What to do if cyberbullying is happening either to you or if you're seeing it happening in an online space or on social media or while you're gaming. What to do if online drama is happening, if there are issues online or you're part of that or you're seeing it happening online. And then the very important issues that people are facing when they're gaming online. And so many young people told us that this is a space that's really important to them and a space where they want to feel safe. And finally, the issue of catfishing. So all of these resources will soon be available for you to download. We'll place them on the Community Education Programs section of the CBAA website. And coming back to the point that I made earlier about the important role that community broadcasters can play in providing young people with information on online safety from a trusted and respected source, we would of course love you to use this content as much as possible. So this could include, of course, broadcasting the CSAs regularly on your station, but also perhaps discussing the issues yourselves on air, perhaps following up these broadcasts with a bit of local discussion on air about the issues that they raise. You could also use the CSAs or the podcasts in or around a local interview with a young person or an online safety expert to provide a really local context for the issue being discussed. We'd love you to share the social media tiles through your networks and also to promote the availability of these resources to your audience members, because your local community organisations, local youth organisations, and local audience members themselves are more than welcome to go online and to download these resources from the Community Educations Programs section of the CBAA website and to use them themselves. As well as this webinar, which will be online, we'll also be developing an online training module that we'll promote through the CBAA network. And this will allow broadcasters and station members, staff and volunteers to learn more about online safety and the CBAA resources in their own time. If you want some more information about the project and the resources that CBAA has produced, please do contact me at any time. Just email me at iwatson@cbaa.org.au. My email contact is also on that Community Education Projects section of the CBAA website. If you want some more information about e-safety and all of those wonderful resources and research that Kelly has referred to, please do visit esafety.gov.au. You'll find an absolute wealth of information and advice on online safety, along with some really good content and research into online safety for young people, and some really practical resources which you could use to inform some local broadcasting on this topic. So we now do have some time for some questions from anyone who's online, for myself or Kelly. So please do pop those into chat if you would like to ask us a question.
And also keep in mind that if you want to ask questions after revisiting this session online at the CBAA's various websites, you can feel free to get in touch with Ian via that email address. I would like to say thank you on behalf of the Community Broadcasting Association to both Ian Watson and Kelly Britnell for appearing here this afternoon. It is sort of getting to that time of the year where people are saying this is a 2023 problem, but both of them testament to their work, making themselves available this afternoon to present. I really appreciate it. So thank you to both of you.
Thank you very much, Danny. I'd also really like to thank once again the eSafety Online Safety Grants Program for providing their support and their funding for the CBAA Online Safety Project. So thank you to everyone who's watching this webinar, and thank you again to Kelly for sharing with us today.
Excellent. All right then, Kelly, I don't know if you've got anything more that you would like to say?
I'd just like to say, I think this is a very exciting project, and it's what we want to see with the grant money that we give out, that it's going to a really good cause, and I think it's going to have great reach and influence. And if we can help people, I think that's the most important thing, and to know that we might be there at a time where you really need help, and to make sure that you access the services that we have. So thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you, Kelly. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for this today. Of course, this will be made available online. Please do check out the resources, and thank you so much to both Kelly and Faina for all of their hard work as part of promoting online safety for young people via community radio.